Welcome to the February Superintendent Advisory Council. I appreciate everyone being here today. I do believe we have some people that are joining us online, so I want to remind everyone, if you are joining us online, to please make sure that you keep your cameras on. You will need to be streaming, and also your microphone should be muted when you are not speaking.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, Commissioner Fletcher, before we get started, anything you would like to add?
It's good to see everyone. And it's something else too. I want to make a comment about seeing so many of you across the river, if you will. It makes a difference. It makes a big difference when the commissioner comes in to talk to someone and they've already talked to 3 superintendents, or the commissioner says, and then 3 superintendents follow. It makes a difference when there's more and more that are coming in and talking. And, for the most part, we probably agree on 95% of the things. Well, maybe 90%. 90 to 95% of the things, but it is great to see so many that are there in the hallways of the legislature. It makes a difference. And, the relationships that you're building also strengthens the relationships that I'm building. So again, thank you for being there. I do feel like I have a part-time apartment over there in the annex, which has been good. I will also like to take the opportunity to thank my staff here at KDE. Anytime a legislator calls, it's almost a stop, drop, and roll. And we try to answer questions as quickly as possible and try to get information over. Of course, there's a lot of bills, and I'll stay after if anybody has any specific questions. But there are some bills in there. I will say the committee sub was introduced on House Bill 500, the budget bill, and that has a lot of positives in it. For example, my understanding, and again, I haven't reviewed it all personally. I just got it this morning. The insurance has been more along the lines of I believe the governor's language that's been added into the budget bill in that committee sub. Also, too, there's an increase in transportation. And the way I read it is right now, it is the 100% of the current year's funding. Okay, just let's be very clear, current year's funding. We don't think that it's as far as the projections for next year. We have sent over the number that we're looking at for next year. I think we're about 491 million is what we're saying. So again, 100% of the current year, I think 398 million was the current year. Of course, with inflation, I don't have to tell you how much bus costs compared to just 2, 3. Matter of fact, I think one of the numbers I saw when I first started, I think a 72 passenger bus was around 80,000. And now it's about 163,000, double. Which is, it's unbelievable that in 10 years that something could double that much. And then those are the kind of costs that we're all facing. Of course, I don't have to tell you that. Other wins that if you're one of the districts that were in the nickel, I believe that the equalization language is there. So that was very good. And for those of you that I've already gone through that nickel process with your districts, you know how difficult that is and how much information you have to work on to make sure that's out there. So for those new districts, I think there's 17 actually that passed, maybe the largest number, 1-year number that we've seen that's been included. But again, there's language in there for the last time that this may be quote unquote for the last time, but we'll see. Other things too, as far as 257, I'll say this is the accountability bill. It is a step in the right direction. It is a launch. It's not all the way to where we want it to be. For example, I think everybody at the table would absolutely agree moving from change to growth is imperative. So there is in the current bill to include growth in the accountability model, and that would replace change. Local accountability is also a part of the model. Some parts that, something that we also had in the original, again, the original COOL and KBE proposal was taken across, and that original proposal had no funding whatsoever for local accountability. So let's be very clear. The very first proposal had no funding. Well, it was changed to be a 60% trigger instead of having all districts within 4 years to have a local accountability model to a 60% trigger. And then there was actually language, and I was asked, what would I recommend as far as funding? And I said $10,000 per district and $3 per student. And I wanted that to be an annual allotment to each district. That was changed to a one-time $15,000. So again, the original had no money whatsoever, so I consider a one-time $15,000 at least that's a plus. Other parts in that bill that were taken out that may have some discussions moving forward. We had originally was proposed that every district would adopt a common interim assessment system. And then after talking with superintendents, we did a couple of town halls, and there was some superintendents that we would prefer to keep our own interim assessment. So what we did was made it opt-in. So each district could opt in to an interim assessment system, much like your STAR, MAP, iReady, that would align with the summative assessment. That was in the original proposal, but that was taken out. And I'll be honest, I believe it's primarily the cost. There's a lot of support for that still yet. And then the other piece that was in there was the adaptive reading and mathematics tests at the end that would also get grade level equivalency. That was in the original proposal, but that was also taken out, and again, primarily due to cost. There's other nuances in there that's back and forth, but some other things that was proposed is we really wanted to move away from the color ratings. Again, some districts really enjoy the color ratings, and that's fine. But we really feel like it's more about collaboration, not competition among districts. So we were really pushing for that. That was not included in the final version of 257. I would love to see that changed. But I will say, if we do local accountability well, I think we have an opportunity to prove maybe in years to come, in budget session or in sessions to come, that we could get away from that color coding. But I think it starts with that local accountability piece as that first step. So that being said, there's other bills that are out there. I'll try to, since we have a very long agenda here, which I think is very impressive, as a matter of fact, very excited about. I'll hold off and I'll answer any questions that you may want me to answer now, or I'll stay after and answer also too. So, Mr. Ballinger, any questions?
Anyone have anything now that you would like to ask the commissioner?
Not, I'll make one more comment that I'm very excited about. I want to take an opportunity to also, I thanked our staff here for being being able to work with our legislators. I also want to make a comment about our my four special assistants. Some of the work, something that's come out of that work with communication with superintendents. We have a meeting tomorrow, I think, with maybe 20 some superintendents to talk about audits. What does that look like in special education? What are some changes that maybe need to happen? And we're trying to get that, because that was a lot of the comments that came back through some of our meetings. Okay, how are we doing audits here at KDE? Does it need to be a rotational basis? How can we make that better? And then again, we want it to be a uniform, everybody understands, and because we don't want to do audits. Let's just be honest. I don't want to do an audit. But again, there's some monitoring that needs to happen as it goes forth. And the last thing I'll mention that is not part of the legislative session, Kentucky, along with many other states, were denied the 1% cap waiver. Okay. Essentially, we're going to have to go into a intervention plan, if you will, to talk about how to move forward. I do know that you've probably talked with your co-ops and your surtax about some steps moving forward, and I think that's a good first step. But essentially, we've been granted a waiver because we've been over the 1% cap for alternate assessments, I think, since it was started, and maybe in 2017. But, and we've grown. So basically, we're going to have to decrease. Now, I think you can ask anyone, IDEA and this 1% cap is in direct conflict. If an ARC determines that a student needs those type of services, how can you deny that? It's very frustrating. I'll just be upfront with you. But we've had several states, and I think we've even made some over the years. When I say we, KDE's also brought that to the attention at the federal level, but it's been this is the 1%. So we'll still fight that number. But in the meantime, that moving forward, it's going to have to look like, how do we make sure that we're making progress back towards that 1%? It may require some, the first steps, again, working with your surtax. I think that's a good first step. And then we'll move forward, because we don't want to lose that title funding. If we look around the table, if you think about the title funding that we're receiving, especially Title I, that would be detrimental. So, and I can't explain how we get around that conflict between IDEA and this 1% cap, because to me, they're in direct conflict, and we'll keep pointing that out. But in the meantime, we'll have to make progress on cutting down that 1%. We haven't lost any funding yet. And again, we will have to submit that intervention plan. We do have some questions that we're submitting back to USAID to get some answers on that, on how we move forward too, just so that you know. All right, Ballinger.
Thank you, Commissioner. This time, Aaron, would you take the roll call?
Amanda Abel.
Here.
Wayne Ackerman.
Here.
Matt Baker.
Here.
Carrie Ballinger.
Here.
Larry Begley.
Here.
Buddy Berry. Wes Bradley. Robin Cochran, Tom Cochran,
Here.
Ralph Hamilton, Bob Lawson,
Here.
Barry Lee,
Here.
Matthew Matting,
Here.
Chad Molly,
Here.
Todd Neese,
Here.
Brian Robinson,
Here.
Mike Rowe,
Here.
Sherry Satterlee, John Seiler, Wayne Sizemore,
Here.
Seth Southard, Sarah Wasson, Leonard Whalen,
Here.
and Brian Yearwood.
Thank you, Aaron. At this time, we do need an approval of our November minutes. You have those in front of you, and those were also emailed to you previously by Aaron. If you'll take just a moment to review those, and then I will need a motion to approve the November minutes.
Motion.
The motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, at this time, I would like to welcome Mr. Todd Davis to the podium here to speak with us about certification structure work group. Todd is from the Division Director in the Office of Education License and Effectiveness.
Well, good afternoon, and it's good to see everyone. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to share the work from the work group that's been established over the last year, but then where we're moving forward, and an opportunity to seek some feedback from you as superintendents as we move forward with the work group on some of the science efforts, and I'll explain that in detail as we get into this. Back in 2024, the fall of 24, EPSB approved the establishment of a work group to look at our certification structure to see if we're meeting the needs of our districts. And as you can see, the membership that was established, it's a very robust group from superintendents, principals, school counselors, human resource directors, to 3 sitting legislators as well, KDE staff, and multiple K groups. And over time, we have worked together, not only just working within our own confines, but we are working with the field as well, doing some small groups and some focus group sessions and collecting feedback as well. Next slide, please. So as part of this work, we started meeting last January, and in June of last year, we made a recommendation to the EPSB to consider a slight change in some of our structures as far as the certifications and the way they're set up. Due to some of the challenges with preschool and kindergarten, with the interdisciplinary focus on those standards and the multiple standards compared to elementary, we recommended that remain the same. However, consider an endorsement for those teachers to add the grades 1 through 3 as well. For elementary, we've had a caveat for years that it's K-5, but grade 6 could be taught if it's in the same building as 5th grade. Or if it was self-contained. And so it made sense to move forward and just make that a permanent decision or practice with K-6. The middle school, we, as a group, made a recommendation to add a grade down lower to allow specialized instruction for elementary students, due to the fact that most of our elementaries departmentalized starting in 4th grade. So that would allow middle school teachers to teach 4th and 5th grade in the content areas that they're certified in. And then additionally adding a 7th grade to the 8 through 12, similar fashion, but due to some of the changes in the graduation requirements that are being taught deeper and deeper into our middle school grades, it would allow permissions there as well. Next slide, please. So some of the work group, and as I'll speak to the focus groups and the feedback we've gotten, we were looking at special education, mathematics, and then we're going to specifically talk about the sciences today. But with special education, due to some of the constraints of IDEA, the very mass variance of differences in our LBD and MSD students, the majority of our feedback was to leave the certificate for special education as specialized those specialized fields. And again, we've looked at a comprehensive, which seems to be the most simplistic approach, but due to some of those challenges, we do have a neighbor, West Virginia, who has a plan in place right now where they've added a comprehensive that doesn't seem to be going as well as they had anticipated. But our with many of our states that are our neighboring states, our format seems to align consistently with those states. For mathematics, the challenge wasn't necessarily around certification. This was more around permissions. And so as a group, we've come to a consensus that math, the contents of Algebra 1 and geometry, the challenge is that a middle school teacher can teach ninth grade students Algebra 1 and geometry. However, if you're a 10th, 11th, or 12th grader, those classes can't be taught by that teacher. So we are most likely going to make a recommendation to expand the permissions for that, for the middle school mathematics certification to teach those students, simply for the fact that the content doesn't change. It is the same course. So then expanding those permissions to allow them to teach those students in those cases. Next slide, please. So as I said, science is our focus today. As you can see, this slide here was provided by NCTQ. Tennessee, which is much like us, as well as West Virginia, they have a specialized certificate specifically for each of the sciences. However, there are 30 states currently that offer a general science. And so that was the focus of the work group, trying to make a decision. One, do we need to move forward with potentially offering a general science? And if so, what does that look like? Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is just a map. This is a map demonstrating the 30 states that do offer a general science. There's a little bit of a mix as well. And so this is fun for colorblind people like me, but I think I've figured it out over the last several weeks. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have been working with focus groups. We did present to superintendents at the Winter Summit as well through KASS. So I appreciate that opportunity. But in these focus groups, we spoke with the content teachers, specifically in each of the science areas, building administrators, as well as staff, school counselors, et cetera, district administrators, human resource directors, along with superintendents, and then other supervisor of instruction. Our higher ed partners have a critical role in this as part of the preparation. So we've involved not only our ed prep folks, but then the faculty that specialize in each of the content areas at the universities and colleges as well. And then some other stakeholders at the state level, such as our consultants here at KDE that work with the sciences, and post-secondary Council of Education as well. Next slide, please. So during these focus groups and discussions, we looked at the preparation. What would it take to, what changes would be needed to address not only a general science, but then how can we allow for opportunity to expand upon that, not limit teachers that go into a general science, but then also create flexibility for those teachers to have opportunity to teach multiple subjects. The certification itself, we focused on a comprehensive, which would mimic our mathematics and our social studies contents, but then more with a science focus. And then the permissions, we have talked about the grade bands as well. And so with the changes of the removal of the integrated science courses, moving to the conceptual progression of science courses, then how can permissions be expanded or potentially moved around a little bit to provide more flexibility? And then future impact, what are the consequences, whether it be a good consequence in flexibility or creating issues with teachers being forced to teach contents they weren't necessarily either prepared for back in their time of preparation, or if they just wanted to specialize in like in a content area. Next slide, please. So the feedback that we received, one, there was very, very consistent and strong support to move to a general science approach. Now, getting it on down to the details of how that works, that's where we are today, and why we want feedback from you today as well. But we're also looking at ways we can expand the pools of applicants for these shortage areas, especially the physics and chemistry courses or teachers, but then also biology as well and earth space. But then also there was a broad agreement on the specialization and keeping that, maintaining what we currently have so that we don't force teachers and create a different issue for those that want to specialize, but then don't have that opportunity. So again, very fine line to walk, but one we have to get by. So next slide, please. So looking at quality, again, wanting to look at flexibility, but with some guardrails was the consistent feedback. Wanted to consider, again, an opportunity for teachers to teach AP dual credit courses. And if we are not careful with the ed prep side of things, then we're going to hinder potentially those individuals for meeting qualifications to get those advanced degrees to teach those dual credit courses. And then there was a mention of district accountability and documenting teachers' readiness to maybe add a course or permissions or a certificate or credential. Next slide, please. So in addition to the general science major, we've talked about what defines a major. And right now, EPSB's definition is at least 30 credits, 30-hour credits. And so one is how that's being implemented across the state with our EPPs varies from institution to institution. And so we're having discussion, are we asking too much in this major? So right now our individual EPPs and institutions define that major. And currently the majority of our EPPs or institutions require a full chemistry major or full physics major in biology. And the number of courses that are taken or required are those needed to teach high school, secondary science courses. And so we're having discussions around that, but then also with the potential science or general science along with a concentration area to where they could do both and focus on one area and specialize and again, qualify for those advanced degrees. Next slide, please. So as we move forward, again, very fine line to walk, but we're looking for ways to create flexibility. The other thing we have to keep in mind is yes, we want to provide flexibility, but we don't want to have such an extreme change that we have to come back in 4 or 5 years and readjust because we've gone too far. So we're trying to balance the approach and address our needs, but then also maintain the integrity of the science profession. So at this time, I would love to have some feedback from each of you. Again, right now we're in deep discussions with this work, but at the same time, we're entertaining just about anything that's on the table. So we don't want to hinder you from asking questions just because you think it may be too extreme. So can you go back one slide, please? So the first question, just asking, one, what do you think would be the best approach for us to take if in considering expanding science certifications with, along with the general science? Are we on the right track? Is there something you would recommend different?
I have a question as
Sure.
part of the feedback process. But
Yep.
you talked about 30 plus states that have generalized science. Was there any review or study to see if there was a difference in student outcomes from one state or one set of certification now?
So
outline?
as part of NCTQ's work on this, it is a little bit older information, but since 2017, this practice and the research was established. So what they've established is general science is probably better, but overall, to meet the needs of the districts and the students, a general science, if they're prepared well, then they're meeting the needs. So, but that, I think it depends on which measure you use to determine how effective that is.
So in terms of feedback, that would be my feedback, that the outcomes of students and the
Mhm.
flexibility of teachers to serve those students should drive the overall decision from my perspective. Because it's better to have a generally certified teacher who has background and experience in science than no offering at all, or systemic changes in the offerings that we offer in order to find the people who could teach the course.
Right. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments, Todd. Hi,
Sure.
how are you? Putting my high school guidance counselor hat back on, this makes me very happy to think about not having the chemistry, the biology, the specializations as much, because if we're doing what we should do as far as the state approved course codes and lead report, and those teachers are boxed into that certain content, when I might have someone who's certified only in biology, but would be a really good chemistry teacher. So that makes me super happy. My second point would be the grade band recommendations. I stepped out for a phone call, so I don't know if that was just science or if it was any, but being a superintendent with a K-8 school, this makes me happy too. So, I mean, I like the direction just because the outcomes are very important too, but in the world we live in with the shortage that we're experiencing right now, making it more flexible helps tremendously. So thank you for your work on it.
So I'll just reiterate, yes, the grade bands apply to all credentials. And so moving forward with that. And I also add that, while we're focused on the science conversation right now, the look at the requirement of what constitutes a major, even minors, one could be applied potentially to all contents as well. Yes.
Obviously, outcomes for students, most important. One of the things I saw here on science certification, and you mentioned West Virginia, I saw over here, they're yellow. The state's offering general science certification that limits instruction to foundational science. And that might give us some of the flexibility that you had mentioned, so that we can fill some of these needs, but also keep student outcomes for one.
Right.
Because if you look, STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, is where the biggest opportunities for employment are. And we got to have our kids ready to be successful in college and different things. So, and you also mentioned, we don't go too far. It's got to be, right, we got to walk this back.
Right.
So you mentioned West Virginia, and I was looking at that. That might not be a bad model there. And then in some of the slides that were sent out, earlier, leading up to this, was talking about consideration of minors.
Yes.
And I thought that might be something. I'm getting a little bit off topic here because I was thinking about special ed, and I have several MSD classrooms. And it seems like it's always difficult to find that certification. But if as these students that have decided I want to be a special ed teacher, it gets them in that K-12, we can put them anywhere in our school district. But if the colleges would offer some kind of a minor in MSD where it was a certain number of classes, obviously those are some of our most needy students, so it's going to be different from an LBD. But then if you consider that minor, that it helps that kid, they know that might make them a little bit more employable in MSD, get their foot in the door there. I don't know. That was just things as I was going through the slides and listening to you was, STEM careers are huge. Student outcomes, as you mentioned, is huge. But if we come like a West Virginia, where they got that general science that limits lower level. Some of you in here that have been high school principals, I never was. I know Bob from Henderson was. You might be able to speak a little bit more of that about the lower level. Might be something we're not having to walk back.
So Oh, two things. For the special ed, as I mentioned, IDEA, some of the requirements, we can't reduce the amount of coursework. And so that's a challenge. However, those are the types of things that we are looking at as we move forward with special ed in the future, is how we could, one, help recruit individuals into those areas, but then are there other ways that we can modify, even potentially looking at permissions for some of those courses that are specifically designed for special education that are limited right now as well. And then on the general science for West Virginia, it varies from state to state. So West Virginia is very limited. They're freshman classes only. However, Oregon allows the general science that teaches up to grade 11. And so, again, it varies. There is a survey out right now through our national partner, getting an idea of what states specifically do, but it's more focused on how those teachers are actually prepared. And so how we may modify those programs as well. So just some information.
Can I say something? Todd?
Sure, absolutely.
So first of all, Sherry, I didn't know you was a high school guidance counselor. I think it's the hardest job in the school district. So thank you for that. I was a high school principal for about 9 years, and I can, so I do appreciate going back to those and putting those courses back on the transcripts of students that say chemistry and physics and whatever. And it keeps people like me putting a lot of pressure on people like Sherry to water down an integrated science curriculum that's supposed to be 51% chemistry when we know it's probably not anyway. So thank you for helping us be a little bit more honest in what we do daily anyway. I don't mind the caveat of having a dual credit, if you're going to offer college credit for it, that the, credentials might be a little stricter, but I would certainly advocate for general science certification across all grade levels. And if they want to attach some college credit for it for duality or something like that, but I don't know. I heard you say that West Virginia did the MSD LBD and it's not working out very well, but I don't know. And I certainly just want to throw this out there. I'd say everybody in this room knows it. I believe that I'm right when I say that there might be only 3 or 4 universities in the state of Kentucky that even offer MSD certification now. So when you talk about being able to find people to fill those positions, one of the things that I would hope that the committee would consider is not just the availability of people willing to do that, but the availability of places to go get that. And I know that we don't want to chase after a dream that was broken in another system, but I think if we're going to offer solutions, I'm willing to make a bad decision than no decision. That's just how I feel about it.
I will share that our MSD programs are growing. We've approved a couple here within the last several months, and there are a couple more in the works of being approved. So hopefully that will help as well.
And I would echo that I appreciate all the work that's going into this and trying to find some flexibility and ways to maneuver to get us highly qualified teachers in every classroom for the benefit of our kids. And I would share the sentiment is we got to keep looking for solutions for special ed. Because I'll be honest with you, I would rather have, and I appreciate the fact that people on that in that working group said that there are much different skills required for MSD versus LBD, but I would still rather put a duly certified LBD MSD person in an MSD classroom versus a substitute teacher, because that's about the only option you got if you can't find an MSD teacher, because you can't do emergency certification anymore. So
I think
keep that in mind that,
right.
that outcome is better than the one we have now.
Yeah. And I was surprised, but the majority of the feedback we've received from not only teachers, but then directors of special education, that we potentially create a different problem in people leaving the field because they are now being forced to teach both populations that when they weren't, either don't desire it. So it's right. That is very true. So we're trying to find ways to bridge that gap.
And we've just got some very dire circumstances right now with the lack of certified personnel in that area.
Well, it's certainly better plan and proposal than what I proposed to Commissioner Fletcher one time. I wanted a K-12 certification where you could teach anything, anytime. So it's certainly better.
I'm not
than
going to say that
Todd.
wasn't mentioned.
I'm not going. Commissioner Fletcher said he didn't think he was going to get on board with that, but thank you for at least.
I
you
just
know,
wanted to say, thank you to Todd. He has been instrumental, our work group. We have heard it all. And, the focus and the intentionality that we have taken into consideration, it just keeps going and going and going, spending. But we do need to hear from you about ideas and suggestions, because that's where we then say, okay, is that possible to dream that dream or to make that happen? I'm glad you mentioned about the MSD and the LBD for what Chad was saying, because whenever we started polling people and talking to people, my background is special ed and I was LBD, or still am. When teachers tell you, you put that on my certification and I'm resigning. If you require it, because I will have people that will make me then teach that area, or I have already petitioned to have that removed from my certification, even though I'm certified in that. We have to be sensitive that educators have spoken and said, I don't want that option because that's going to run me out of education and we don't want to be detrimental there. The other big piece that I didn't realize when I started researching it is our post-secondary partners and understanding what they are able to do and how they're able to. I thought adding preschool, would be a good thing because we can't find preschool teachers either. But then when I heard the post-secondary partners talk about the standards and the different way and the ways they teach that and the preparatory methodology and so forth that was connected to that, it's not as easy as it is just to say we're going to add that certification. So, but Todd's willingness to listen and research, like you said, the West Virginia and all of those things to say, what about this? What about that? He's Commissioner, you need to keep him.
Can I
Sure.
offer, I don't know, maybe a suggestion?
Absolutely.
That maybe finds middle ground with the LBD MSD thing. Is there an opportunity to find an expedited pathway for an LBD teacher who wants to get the MSD certification? Because right now I've got people in my district that have done that but it requires them going back to school for a master's degree in a sense, which costs them a great deal of money and time. And maybe that's the happy medium is, can we find another more cost-effective way for somebody who they may not want it coming out as a combined cert, but maybe somebody who has some exposure to it through the course of their early career and decides a job opening comes and they'd like to have that certification. And we figure out a more efficient, cost-effective way to get it to them.
So those are things we are discussing and researching. I will say because of some of the IDEA requirements, again, I think that's our biggest challenge is that we have to adhere to that, not only in the classroom, but then in preparation as well. And so, again, very fine line to walk, but we are exploring just about every potential option.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure.
Especially with the option 9. I can't say enough about how that is so supportive for instructional assistants who may be in that classroom of an MSD, and because of the on-job training that they have, and they get into that option. So, thank you for the work with that.
I just have another comment and then maybe a question that would go with it as well. But again, I want to join my colleagues here in thanking you for looking at certification options. It's so important as we attract our teachers. Regarding science in particular, when we look at student outcomes and it appears that some of the generalists who have gone through a science background and training, major, minor, are having success in a generalized way. It feels like even, I would ask that we go towards the red states as opposed to the West Virginia model, in that it feels like advanced science offerings are sort of baked in from an accountability standpoint. A university partner is not going to allow you to teach dual credit unless you have a specific number of specified credit hours. And in an AP setting, there's an assessment that encourages a local accountability for making sure that you have highly qualified teachers in that mix. And if student outcomes are at least at par with the specialized states, it doesn't feel like much of a gamble to me to open up the opportunity for more teachers to engage our kids in science. But I really do appreciate the reflective approach to consider all options, to look to it. I guess my question is, from a timeline, next steps standpoint, as we're into hiring season and we're thinking about certifications and how we populate the master schedule, as Sherry talked about, what are the next steps in this process?
So once the work group gets to consensus and we make a recommendation, which the tentative goal is June, I'm hopeful that that may happen sooner, based on some of the conversations. Some of the information that we'll have for our next meeting in March will help determine that. And then we'll present that to the board as soon as possible. Then you're looking at potentially a year to 18 months as far as the ed prep changes that are being made, because we have to allow times for that, which leads into the last question that I'm posing to you all is, how do we meet the needs now? So that is not what we want to. We want to create more opportunity for the future, but then we also have to address current need. So then looking at potentially expanding or modifying our highly qualified route. How can we add credentials for those that are specialized? How can we add individual credentials or even a general science credential? South Carolina, for instance, requires any teacher that has chemistry, has a chemistry degree or chemistry certification. If they've had 8 hours, so that's 2 courses and an accompanying lab for each in each of the contents, then they qualify for that as well. So those are the things that we're looking at. So what other ideas can you propose that we could consider and discuss as we move forward to address current need?
I'll chime in there, and I think we made this presentation maybe to LSAC also too.
Yes.
And one of the I thought was an interesting proposal was, if you have for example, well, let me go back for just a second. I want to applaud the group for looking at the permissions for mathematics. If you can teach Algebra 1 and geometry in the 9th grade, you should be able to teach Algebra 1 geometry in upper levels. This makes sense. So looking at the permissions, I want to applaud the group for doing that. The other, as far as the expanding the science certifications, some of the ideas, and again, these are just ideas that have been thrown out there, and I think that have some potential. Would be good to hear your input. Is, let's say that you've had a biology teacher that's taught for a couple of years, has been successful. Then you look on their transcript, and there's some chemistry courses there. If they've taught a couple, one of the things was if they've taught a couple of years and are successful, and they have X number of chemistry courses, could we give them permissions or a certification of some sort to also teach chemistry? But again, I think those are interesting, because if you look at, for example, the general science, we start doing a general science certification, that's going to take time to implement. So the transition time there, that's not a quick fix. So if we had a chemistry teacher that had some biological science background, would it be 2 years recommendation, looking at their transcripts? Your all's thoughts on that, I think, would be very important too.
I was just going to add, and I don't want to belabor what's already been pointed out, because I just want to compliment the work that's being done. But I think the more logistically challenged you are, like a district like mine, the more difficult it is, regardless of what certification area you're looking at, just because of demographically where you're located. And the pool is very shallow in just about any job that you look to put out a certified listing for it, in some cases, even classified listings. But I was just going to say, commend your work, but as much as you can stretch that in any direction to give us maximum flexibility, the better off we're going to be. And every year it gets more difficult. And I don't know if there's ever been any discussions about, any potential waivers or anything like that we could apply for inside the district, because I think what Brian said is exactly right. And what Chad said, we got people that are certified, but they're out of their subject area. you'd like to get them just to fill a position, and we've got that already, them filling areas outside of their certification area. But I feel like I'd rather have a certified person in there as opposed to a high school graduate that's acting as a substitute, basically taking on that same role. So I don't know what the real answer is there, but the maximum flexibility we could get to get at least a certified person in there would be helpful as well. And I don't know what the answer is to that, but that would be something that I would, think would be beneficial if we had something to go in that direction.
So I'll say, feel free to reach out and I will help you work through, or one of my staff will help you work through some of those potential waivers, because we do have that availability right now in some
Okay.
cases. But then other potential ways we may be able to help you. But then as things progress with this, it may make some changes. And again, as we look through the sciences, we're also keeping an overall lens on this approach as well. So how can this help implement not only for the sciences, but other subjects?
Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
But I do have a clarifying question
Okay.
about the grade band recommendation.
Yes.
Would that only apply to newly certified educators coming out, or would that be retroactive to be able to change the permissions of our current teachers?
So the board will make that ultimately make that decision. Our recommendation is to right now we have 9 different elementary credentials, and each of those have different grade bands. So we want to streamline those as much as possible. So, and it could be an opt-in approach to allow individuals to do that and expand their certificate rather than force them. But it's something that we have to consider, but then the board will make that decision. But most likely our recommendation will be to apply to all, but as they choose.
Thank you.
One more question dealing with preschool.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any discussion with preschool for instructional assistants that have been in the field for multiple years? Not really an option 9 program, but finding a way to allow that to be the years of experience and then going into a certification to expedite that certification. So, example, I have a lady that's been in for 20 years. She's would be an amazing teacher. She's at that point in her career where it may not be feasible to move into, go into an option 9 program, but find a way to give that credit for experience plus some additional coursework other than an option 9.
So one of the things that's required for all teachers in Kentucky is they hold a bachelor's. That's the minimum. So that's one hurdle we have to get over, right? However, the option 9 does allow flexibility for the institutions to look at that experience and count that experience towards their coursework. So with 20 years of experience, they may have a significantly reduced amount of work that they have to do course-wise, but they still receive credit through that articulation.
But that would be different at every institution. Is that correct?
Correct.
Probably.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I don't want to take any more time. I'd love to speak or talk with you all day, but I want to leave time for my colleagues to their presentations. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. This is my contact information and my assistant director. Please, we're open to any and all conversations, even if you want to criticize. Sometimes that it takes that to help move forward as well. So please reach out. And if you need help working through situations, we're more than happy to help you work through those as well.
But I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues and just say thank you so much for your work in this. It's very valuable, and it's really going to provide some flexibility to us as superintendents as we're trying to fill those critical positions. So thank you.
Thanks for the feedback and thanks for the time.
Next on our agenda, we have a presentation about unanticipated school building closures from our school and community nutrition team. I think this is something that's very important to all of us, especially coming out of many of us missed 2 straight weeks of school recently. So thank you all for joining us today.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Moore, the Director of School and Community Nutrition. I think we would all like to think that we won't need this the rest of the year, but that might be wishful thinking. I am accompanied by Katie Embry. She's our school meal programs manager, and Kathy Gallagher, who is our summer food service program manager. Next slide, please. So I'm going to preface my comments by saying these are all options that are available to you. Nothing that we're going to talk about is required. These are just available options. I know you all have a lot of decisions that have to be made when you determine a school closure, you know, financial situations and safety, and determining whether meals will still be served. There's just a lot of different things that you have to consider. Unanticipated school closure, of course, can refer to many different things that may cause you to have to close school, but weather, of course, is the most common. Although school meal programs typically have to be offered in a congregate setting, the USDA offers us, the state agencies, an option to allow you all to serve non-congregate meals when school is closed. It does have to be unanticipated. The non-congregate feeding options, of course, can be many different. Let me pause by saying non-congregate, of course, your congregate feeding, you're typically feeding in school breakfast, school lunch, snacks. The issue that we had, I want to just talk about a little bit about the issue we had with the last weather event is we knew the weather was coming and it was a Friday. So we have to approve, SCN has to approve any waivers in advance of the it can't be in anticipation of a weather event. You have to have closed. So this last major storm that we had last month was Friday. So we had a lot of questions about whether or not we could send meals home over the weekends in anticipation of those closures. And those are things we're not able to do. The closure actually has to have been, you have to have already canceled school. And of course, we know that's unlikely that you all are going to do that on a Friday when we haven't had a weather situation yet. And we can approve up to 10 days for each unique circumstance. As you mentioned, this last situation, we did have some districts that were out almost that full 10-day period. It was also, you know, in many areas of the state, a dangerous situation. So again, you all have to decide whether or not you are going to make that decision in each individual different circumstance. I think I've gotten through. Next slide, please. Gotten through most of that. I'm a visual person, so I think this is the best. I think this is in your packet, but this will show you what feeding options are available and depending on whether you do NTI or closure. So if you are going to have a non-traditional instruction day, and instruction, of course, is still occurring, the program that has to be utilized for that option is the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. And if you have a true closure day or a traditional snow day, that is going to be a summer meal program. So oftentimes you all probably have your food service directors asking you, you know, are we going to do NTI or are we going to truly close? And they need to know those things in advance because and of course, you're making those decisions very quickly. We can work with your food service directors. They can have all of their information put into our system, and I'm going to let Katie and Kathy talk about that process a little bit. But we can work with them in advance. They can put the information, the waiver information into our system, and they have to go in and do an application. But all that can be done in advance. And so I'm going to let them talk a little bit about that process and how we've tried to streamline that because it does happen very quickly, and we understand that.
Thank you. And thank you again for having us. Kathy and I talked about this the other day. When you all make a decision to close, it's often at the last minute. We know you've got so much on your plates. The last thing we want to do is make it more complicated for you. So we've worked over the years to try to streamline, make this easier. Wish we had a magic wand that you didn't have the different programs to navigate, but that's at the USDA level. But we're going to try to make it as easy as possible for you. So through the National School Lunch Program, that is what you will use if it is an NTI day. You can only feed enrolled students. And I know to a parent, when you have a closure, students are home and they don't quite see the difference between my student is home, is it NTI or is it full closure? And it's hard to explain that to parents that if it is NTI, only the enrolled students can be provided a meal. Or in Kathy's program in summer food service, you can feed their siblings too. So we encourage your child nutrition directors to communicate that often and early, because that's often a point of confusion. What we have done for you is we've provided a handout to you that kind of gives you the timeline or the process that we follow for either program. Once the decision is made for it to be NTI or what we call a full closure, that's no instruction, that's the decision point for the program that will be operating. There's a QR code for NTI that sends it to the schools branch team or the team that I work with. The other QR code directly goes to Kathy's team for the summer food service program. As soon as that's submitted, we reach out to you. We were working at night. We're going to be in quick contact with your child nutrition director. Once we have that, that's our go time to help assist you answer all of those questions. We do require procedures to be submitted. We just want to make sure that there's no duplication of meals. We don't want any of those issues. We do offer pre-approval of procedures. Child nutrition directors can do that at any time. We highly encourage them to reach out to us. You have pre-approved procedures that just expedites, it's just so fast. So we recommend taking advantage of that. Once you do submit the waiver, we'll get you approved. We'll work with you, navigate all those situations that they'll need help with. And then at the end of meal service, we are required to collect meal counts because we need to send those back to USDA. So that is something that's required for NTI feeding. It's not required for SFSP. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Kathy to talk about her program.
Thank you, Katie. I'll just make a few points that have already been made, but just to emphasize. So with the summer food service program, it's typically a community program. So children that are students as well as other children can be fed at any open site when they're serving in unanticipated school closure without instruction or a typical snow day. So I think the important thing is that it's a very streamlined process, that as soon as a child nutrition director believes there's going to be a closure, that they can submit their waiver request and we get an automated notification that that's been sent in, and immediately things start to move. We get in touch with the child nutrition director. We talk about what needs to be done. We help them with their application. With the summer food service program, most districts do participate, so they have an application that has really all the information in it. It needs to be updated, so it's really very quick. And then as soon as they can put the application in place and as soon as the closure is verified, we can approve it and meal service can start. So it's now a very streamlined process, and we want it to be that way so that kids can get meals during these times out of school.
Thank you. I knew there was one thing I failed to mention. So the 10 days that we can approve for an individual circumstance, if you do have a circumstance that's more than 10 days, we can still go to the USDA to work with them. Hopefully that does not happen. That's a huge disruption, I know, for you all, but that is a possibility. Next slide, please. And this just shows some resources that we have available on our public website. We have just I think it's a 2-page document that shows all of the things we've talked about, gives the QR codes or links to be able to apply for waivers. There's some webinar opportunities we've sent out to your food service directors. And we also have a weekly update, an SCM weekly update. Some of you probably participate or receive that. We put a lot of information in that. And when we have in a weather event, we usually try to send it out again, just so it's top of mind. Next slide, please. And then, of course, this is just our information. If you have any questions or you have a weather event and you just don't know exactly what to do, I mean, you can call any of us. We're happy to walk you through the process. It's fairly simple, but sometimes you may have questions too about things that are outside of weather, because we do have some of those things happen, and we're happy to answer any of those questions or help you work through that process. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
just make sure everybody knows that Lauren Moore is a really proud Frankfurt Independent parent.
Very, very proud.
Very proud. So unanticipated, we know that typically is weather, but it can be something other than weather, correct? Like, and if we call multiple days at once, but they're all unanticipated, can we go ahead and submit like last week when we had our 3 days for sickness?
Yes.
Can we go
absolutely.
ahead and submit? I went ahead and called off 3 days, but all 3 were unanticipated. Can we go ahead and submit waivers for all 3?
You can because you closed for all 3 days
Okay.
and you knew that you had already made that call. I don't know if Katie or Kathy mentioned this, but we will confirm or verify when we get before we can approve the application, we'll verify that the closure has actually occurred. Otherwise, if it's not that and it's weather and you're calling it a day at a time, we can work with you all for that too, of course. You would just put the information in as anticipated days. And then, but in your circumstance,
But
yes.
in circumstances like that, we don't have to do it a day at a time.
No,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? I assume my food service director knows all this you're talking about. So if we weren't doing something appropriately or there was an issue, I'd assume we'd already have gotten a contact on that or we'd be aware of it. Am I right on that?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, if I can. Tom Cochran, Johnson County. You talk about verified. What do you use to verify that a school is closed? Do you not just take the word of the food service director? How do you verify a school is closed?
It's fairly simple. I mean, we will ask them either to send us a posting, Facebook posting, or you've put it on your website, or you've sent a communication to your parents. That's all we'd ask for.
Oh, okay. So do you all do approvals only during your set business hours? And I ask this because lots of times, everyone in this room, every superintendent, we do our very best to go to school every day that we can. And so lots of times decisions to close either are made late at night or early in the morning. And at that time, we also try to make decisions on if we do close school to feed our kids. And the decision to feed our kids, then if we have to wait to see if feeding is approved, we then have to wait to call our people in to prepare the meals. So how long after a submission is made are approvals made? Or do they wait till you all come into work, or you check emails at 5 a.m, or how does that work?
If we know there's been a weather event, we're checking. So on Friday, when we knew there was going to be a weather event, our teams are checking all weekend.
Okay.
And when that QR code's used, and well, 2 different things. So once the QR code is used and it goes to that form to put a waiver request in, an email goes to our teams. And then if they go into CNIPS and start an application and submit that, an email goes to our teams. So when we know that there have been weather situations, we're checking all the time.
Okay.
Can I add on to that one as well? We also, both of our teams, all of our staff have good relationships with directors. We often reach out in advance. We always say, let us know a submission is coming. Let us know something is happening. We cannot approve retroactively, but we don't have to have the final approval in place either because things are moving so quickly. It's notification to us. So we're involved and we know that the process is happening. So we try our very best. We know things are moving quickly for you all.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. There's obviously 2 different types of approvals, right? So do they require 2 different types of requests? Do the NTI day request require a different request than a non-school day? Is there any way to streamline those? Because a lot of times schools try to do alternate NTI days and those type of things. It would be great if we could put one submission in and say alternate days. Is there a way to do that, or is there no way to do that?
It would be a little bit difficult, but I guess the good news is we communicate very closely. So as soon as we know that there is possible school closure, Katie and I and our staff, we're in communications with each other, and we have access to each other's waiver requests. So we can see who has requested, we can look at that right away. And if somebody were to put a request in both, it has happened, and that could be because they're going to alternate NTI and non-NTI days. We work with them to make sure we get it approved correctly in the application.
Okay, I appreciate that. And my director's on me all the time, want to know what's going to be what, and I'm unsure sometimes, and so I say do both, and it just makes it easier on me and my real office. So
And
thank
if
you
they
all for your.
put it in one and it ends up being the other, we're going to work with them and
Okay.
they can put that information in after.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. If safety is not an issue, are we able to do non-congregate at drop sites if possible?
Yes.
Yes.
Do those have to be pre-approved kind of in our summer fee program, or those places that we would already have designated as drop sites?
Your sites,
Yes.
you go ahead, Kathy.
They would need to be in there because of the way that they would claim. So if there are sites already in the application, they could just update those, or they could add additional locations.
Good question.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you all. This is very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have Miss Jennifer Stafford joining us along with her team to discuss the Junior State SAT Administration. I should have said Dr. Staff.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
well, good afternoon. You all have gone from certification to lunches now to testing. So you've got a wide variety of topics today. Kristen and I wanted to just give you an update this afternoon about the preparations for the upcoming administration of the SAT. It is our first administration of the ACT statewide, and preparations are underway. Due to the diligent and dedicated district assessment coordinators and building assessment coordinators and other testing staff, we feel prepared and we feel ready. We've had multiple trainings across the state, and we really appreciate our education co-op directors for their hospitality on hosting us at our trainings. And so Kristen's going to give you an update about where we are with trainings and other future opportunities.
Yes, so as Jennifer said, my name is Kristen Roseberry, program consultant in the office, and manage the state administration of the college admissions exam, which is the SAT for this year. I was with you all, I think, in November, so just an update from there. So next slide, if you don't care. So just a training recap. We had 8 trainings that we offered at educational cooperatives and KDE back in the month of November. We had a total of 487 educators that attended those trainings. And our College Board partners were with us as well. So that was really good to have them on site and in the state of Kentucky. We've also had office hours. And so this is actually a little bit as of late breaking news. We had an office hour this morning before I came to this meeting. So we've actually had 4 as of this meeting: October, December, and January, and then February. We have discussed school setup. We've discussed requesting accommodations, access to all of their systems. Today, we worked through prepping them as the window opens next week. So our window begins March 2nd and runs through April the 10th. And so that starts next week. We've had, with today's attendance, I think that's about 325 educators that have participated. We've had an accommodations webinar that was hosted by College Board on November the 12th. We had 480 in attendance on that day. And then last week, we also wrapped up our February DAC training Q&A sessions, where we discussed scores and reporting and went out with a training prior to that for those as well. Next slide, please. So where we are currently is our state data management system is open. Our district assessment coordinators are in there diligently checking rosters, ensuring that accommodations have transferred over and their kids are ready to go. We are also working through transferring students between districts and within districts. Our test day toolkit is open, which means our building assessment coordinators can go in there and print test tickets to allow students to take their practice exams and ensure that their devices are all ready to go for next week. And then the students are also completing the student readiness checks, which allows them to submit their information and submit score reports to up to 4 colleges and universities for free, as well as make sure their device is ready to go when they begin testing. Next slide, please. College Board offers a lot of free and engaging SAT practice resources that I think we discussed in November, but there's lots of digital practice tests, question banks, questions of the day. There's official SAT prep on Khan Academy. And then just released also, they have a new partner with schoolhouse.world where they offer official SAT tutoring. So it's a new free peer-to-peer tutoring option as well. And again, with those systems that are open, we have had lots of districts in there practicing with the test preview and practice tests because they can do that now with access to those test tickets. Next slide, please. So upcoming, we did have our office hour in February today. We do have another office hour in March and April that will help to discuss those timely topics as they move through administration to make sure that our schools and districts are ready to go and wrap up the administration. We also will have a webinar at the end of the window to discuss scores and information and how those look as our districts receive their first SAT score reports for the state administration. And so in short, that's a lot of information, but we're ready. We're ready for the administration and we're excited. And it starts next week. Some of your districts may be testing on Monday. I don't know. But some have selected to start on Monday. And so we're excited to get that started.
So we'll entertain any questions that you have or.
Just a thank you. I've gotten a lot of very positive feedback from our high school principal and our TAC on how all this has gone. And I know it was kind of a cloudy beginning back in the fall, but at least in our case, have gone very, very smoothly. Everybody feels really good about it. It's for everything put into it to get them there.
Thank you for sharing that. We have heard very similar comments from our district assessment coordinators in the ease of preparing for the administration, the flexibility in the administration, as well as the customer support that we're receiving from the College Board. So we have heard similar feedback to that as well.
And we've also heard similar feedback from the Council for Post-Secondary Education. They've been very pleased with the partnership that they're going through. And I think they're looking at how Futurity and Big Future, I think is the name of the app, can work hand in hand a little bit more. So again, having a lot of positive comments from CPE also too.
The accommodation process was very seamless. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was
Good to hear.
Yep.
Very good.
Appreciate the
Super
feedback.
talkative today. Kristen, how are you?
I'm good, Sherry. How are you?
I'm good. I want to
Is she a proud parent of Franklin?
listen. I've got connections to everybody today. My sister cuts Todd's wife's hair, and then our husbands work together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I wanted to comment on, and having been a DAC and a BAC in previous roles, I was very fearful of this change. I'll be honest, very fearful of this change. But one piece that we have loved in my district are the practice tests and not having to search for those or pay for those or somewhere else. Just the fact that the College Board offers those on their platform. We've used them 3 times already with our juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, and that's just been amazing. So the cost for the sophomore exam is less than the ACT also, just so you all know.
Thank you for that feedback. And they're going to be adding one. I'm not sure it's available yet, but they're adding an additional practice test. So currently there's 7 full length. There's 10, because there's 3 additional have the essay portion, but of course we don't have that with the state administration, but there's going to be 8 full length practice tests soon. So
I just want to note that the resources that we are able to provide came from part of that negotiation that opened up for us when the legislator switched from having a specific vendor to open up for competitive bid. So the department was able to negotiate more of those type of things. So I'm really glad to hear that those are being utilized.
Love them.
Any other questions?
Anyone else?
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have Brian Perry, Director of Government Relations, to speak to us about expanding preschool access.
Good afternoon. So I will preface this by saying this is a little outside my wheelhouse.
This is not something that I talk about very often, and we have not discussed this at length here at the department. So with that, I've got a few notes that I'll go over and then kick it to you all, and we'll see where y'all want to go. So as you all are fully aware, the governor's office had an advisory committee over the interim that in part led to an ABR, an additional budget request from the department. We asked for right at 129 million in each year of the biennium to offer pre-K for all. So that's a very large ask. In the meantime, we've had 4 bills introduced in both chambers. It's companion bills, so 2 versions in each chamber.
Dr.
Again,
Perry, let me add
yeah,
something.
go ahead.
Just when we talk about the ABR process, our board went through almost I'd say 9 to 10 month long process of having all these additional budget requests that came from the associates. And then after going through that process, the board ranked 27 different additional budget requests, everything from recruiting and education, recruiting and retention to additional SEEK. So our number 1 was the additional SEEK base. And I think our number 3 was the ABR for pre-K, for expanded pre-K. So if you look, and these could range, 129 million was the third on the list for that. And I think we also advocated for first was additional SEEK, and I think second was transportation. Number 2 is transportation. 4th was CATS, if I'm not mistaken, technology. And the other thing I want to say is I actually presented the same ABRs to a lot of your chief financial officers at CASBO and asked them to rank them, but I didn't tell them what our rankings were. Their top 4 was exactly our top 4. And their 5th one was like our number 7. So after presenting the top 27, our 27 to them, just letting them read through it, I let them work in groups. I did a little jigsaw as a former math teacher. And it was amazing. I thought it was great to see that the alignment with your chief financial officers with our Kentucky Board of Education was the top 4 were exactly the same. And then the 5th one, I think, was the number 7 from your, and I honestly, I can't remember what the 5th one was.
Can't remember off the top of my head.
Either. But anyway, that ABR process is what we send over to the governor's office and over to legislators, say, this is what we're asking for over and above the base budget. Keep that in mind.
And I've kind of skipped over a note here. The governor's office did present to Chair Banta's BR sub at the beginning of the month. So that presentation, as well as their PowerPoint, which is, I was going to print it off for you all, but it's 43 pages long, so I decided not to. But it's available online, and I will share that with the committee and get you all copies of those. So with that, there are 4 bills in the House and Senate. They're all Democratic bills, so it's unlikely that they're going to move. You have House Bill 572 and Senate Bill 166, so that's one version. And then you have House Bill 574 and Senate Bill 166, and that's the second version. The best I can tell, the difference is one truly is pre-K for all students that are 4 years old, or that are 3 or 4 with a disability under IDEA. The other version is expanding it to 4-year-olds that are at risk, and they're defining at risk in the bills as a child who resides in a household with income at or below the 250% of federal poverty level. So those are the 2 versions. The House versions have been assigned to committee. It doesn't mean a whole lot. The House is assigning most everything to committee. So unlikely that those move, even though they've been assigned to committee. The Senate bills have not been assigned to committee and likely won't at this point. And so there has been a lot of conversation about not just the governor's pre-K for all push, but I would say just early childhood education. I mean, you all are aware. We've seen several initiatives the last few sessions focused on early reading, early numeracy, really focusing on early benchmark. So kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading level have all been huge topics of conversation. So on a related note, I wanted to mention that a couple of you all, I think, were in the room today, but Senate Bill 191 was passed out of Senate A&R. It previously got out of, I think, Families and Children. So that is Senator Carroll's bill. It's another kindergarten readiness pilot project. And I say another one because we had, I want to say, House Bill 695 from a couple of sessions ago that Representative Jackson sponsored. This one is looking at providing a financial incentive for students that show up kindergarten ready. And that incentive would flow to basically whoever the child was with for the previous 2 years. So a preschool, a daycare, perhaps a family member that was taking care of them. And I thought Senator Givens made an interesting comment today when he said, it sort of recognizes that there are different pathways to kindergarten readiness. It's not necessarily a set pathway for all students. So I kind of wanted to mention that because I think all this sort of ties in to this larger conversation of expanded preschool. As we've listened to the discussions, and again, I don't think there's anything new for you all, but teachers, facility, transportation, all of those have kind of been topics of conversation about kind of the roadblocks to expanding preschool access. I think facilities has definitely been at the top of the conversation. I think both versions of the bill, the best I can tell, recognize kind of public partnerships, public-private partnerships with childcare providers, faith-based organizations, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm not sure what questions you all have or if the commissioner has additional comments. We'll hear I think they just gavelled in a few minutes ago. So here in a bit, House A&R will meet upon adjournment to pass out the House budget. I'm guessing some of you have already seen the same subs that we have seen. That will be a bit telling as to kind of where the direction is going with expanded preschool access in this budget, in this biennium. Obviously, the Senate will weigh in a few weeks, and then we'll see what goes to the governor for action. Obviously, in the meantime, things are about to get very busy. I think to date, one bill has reached the governor for action, not one education bill, just one bill. So a lot of bills sitting in each chamber that have already crossed over. So a lot to happen. Again, none of these bills that I mentioned have moved at all, or have even been heard in committee. So I'd say the clock's ticking for those relatively quickly. Not to say something can't happen late in the session, but that's kind of where we are at the moment. With that, I'll turn it over to the commissioner, chair.
I'll make a quick comment. Thank you, Brian. When it comes to pre-K for all, again, our board has really pushed for expanded pre-K. We do know that there's challenges in every district. For everyone, it's going to be about workforce, is having someone who is certified to be in those classrooms. And of course, facilities would be another issue. Then transportation, what does that look like? Again, we are lobbying, if you will, for that expanded pre-K. We think that is a current pathway, but also too, we're not losing sight of the fact that full day kindergarten is yet to be codified. So we've also been pushing heavily for having, instead of it just being a budget line item, for full day kindergarten to be codified. That would be a huge step also too. Now, over a lot of the conversations that I've had is like, we are, once it's added into the budget bill, it's not going to be removed. Well, okay, if that's the case, let's get it codified and let's make sure we go that route. But again, I think we can all agree that expanded pre-K is something that's important for all of us. I think that's something that we really would ask for as we move forward. But we also understand that there's obstacles, and how do we overcome those obstacles as we move forward to help every single district? For example, Superintendent Cochran, you may not have any issues with facilities, whereas Dr. Lawson, on the other hand, Superintendent Lawson, may not have, maybe strapped for buildings. I'm not sure. I know that in Lawrence County, after we finished, after COVID, we used funding from COVID to have, essentially universal pre-K, like many of you across the table did. And then what we did after that was we found in our budget to say, okay, how many kids do we have that want to come in? We'll fund one more classroom. Well, if that's the case, then what? You're not going to buy an extra bus, or you're basically playing the shell game as it moves forward. So again, we all understand the importance of pre-K. Love to see it happen, but we'd also love to see some how do you phase that in, that phased in approach as we move forward. But we'll be happy to answer questions as much as we can about preschool access or any other bills that you may have questions about.
Mr. My only comment, and I've made it to the governor's office when I've spoken with them as well, is that the thing that concerns me about the phased-in approach, about allowing those that are ready to move ahead with it and those that aren't, is you're creating a situation of haves and have-nots. And you just kind of described it where, you know, I'm surrounded by a couple of pretty big school districts that probably have the resources, if they wanted to expand pre-K to all the 4-year-olds in their district and even maybe do it full day. I don't have those resources. So I don't want to lose families from my school district to those school districts because they can get all day preschool for their kids. I don't want to lose the teachers I have in preschool to those other districts because they're expanding their programs and I'm not in a position to do it. So I would just ask that that be a consideration moving forward, is how can we do this in a way that gives everybody equitable access and doesn't create a situation where some school districts can and others just can't.
Good point.
And I'd like to expand on Superintendent Molly's statement, especially in the bordering parts of our community, because we do have some communities that can start full day preschool immediately. But once we lose those students to pre-K, then they get established in those systems, and we never get those students back to our system if we move forward on a haves and have-nots basis. So that is a concern for rural communities.
Appreciate that.
And I'll just make a quick note that if you've listened to the conversations around House Bill 1 the last few days, that's the federal tax scholarship bill, that only applies to K-12. So those scholarship granting organizations that could be created here in the next little bit would not be able to use those funds for preschool, unfortunately. So just wanted to point that out. And then one last note, I think Superintendent Lee was asking about certification earlier. So you may want to look at Senate Bill 22 if you haven't. So that is a bill from Senator Higdon. It's already over in the House. It has been for a while, but it's a teacher apprenticeship bill. And I'm looking at Superintendent Bradley because he's one of the districts that currently has a registered teachership apprentice program. I don't know that we've talked about certification for preschool teachers through a model like that, but I would say take a look at that bill because there may be some potential there. So just.
And since Dr. Perry mentioned House Bill 1, just for this group, and I've said this to legislators too, you know, there's a lot of concerns that I have with House Bill 1. One, it's going to be primarily for private schools. I think we can all agree on that. The second is, you know, for the funding that would be allowable for public schools, it would be very difficult for a high poverty area to get much funding from a school, from a scholarship granting organization. So for those that are in the high poverty areas, it's going to cause an issue. And I'll brought up another issue today, and I'm actually have some in our legal looking into this to make sure. But from the research I've done, for example, once someone writes their check to a scholarship granting organization, then what if a homeschool parent says, I want money from the SGO to pay for curriculum or something or the other? You know, then would that SGO write the check? They would, and what I'm seeing is they'd write the check directly to those parents. So can you think about how many of your parents would be like, hey, there's more funding coming in if I homeschool? So to me, that causes other issues. So that's something I understand. I fully understand that this is something that we hear a lot, that we need to opt in because we're going to lose the money otherwise. I get it. But also too, on the other hand, how many students will you lose if this funding can go to homeschool? And again, nothing against homeschool. If parents do it and do it well, I'm a supporter. Matter of fact, I've got close friends who've homeschooled and they've done an excellent job. But in all honesty, in a lot of our districts, it's truancy diversion or maybe even truancy dodging, if you will. So again, if there's more accountability for homeschool, that would be something that I'd like to see, honestly. But on the other hand, too, if you're looking at funding just flowing freely to from an SGO to a homeschool or to other issues, that's going to be big issues for us funding wise. And again, that's a question that I have about it. The research that I've seen so far would allow that, would allow the SGO to write give a scholarship to a family that's going into homeschool. And if that's the case, there needs to be some accountability for that homeschool. That's a high quality homeschool if they're going to get that type of funding. So also too, I'd love to see some safeguards in there that would, if there's any type of funding discrepancies of high poverty areas, then how do we address that? There's areas there that I think there's a lot of work on. I fully understand the argument that if we don't opt in, we're going to lose out on this money. But again, my counter argument there is I would argue that it would appear that a lot of this money is going to go to private. It can go to public too. We've also asked questions about, and boards and local boards of education being SGO. And what does that look like? So there's a lot of things that are out there. As a matter of fact, the federal regulations haven't been written yet or haven't been finalized on what exactly does this look like on a federal level? What are the guidelines? And then in turn, the guidelines here at the state level are not there either. Again, I admire the fact that we don't want to miss out on funding, but I am worried about what happens once the funding is in place. Superintendent Begley.
Is this place for rumors?
I'll leave that to you, sir.
So while I'm eating at Jerry's, minding my own business, this particular topic came up, and the topic came up was how will it be funded? And one of the rumors that I heard of how it will be funded is that they expect no extra revenue from the federal government, but they would use federal revenue dollars to fund this tax scholarship granting organization, which would in turn lead one to believe that maybe this would be a decrease in title funds to all districts in order to fund House Bill 1. Now, that's a Jerry's Restaurant rumor.
I'd say there's a variation on that Jerry's Restaurant rumor that could be very true. But if you have an individual that writes a $1,700, like if you got a $10,000 bill, hope none of us around here have a $10,000 tax bill coming in personally, and you want to write a $1,700 check to an SGO as a tax credit, that would lower your payment to the federal government to $8,300, and the $1,700 would go to the SGO. So at that point, whatever guidelines are there is, again, it's a lot of this is speculation. Please keep in mind what I'm saying here is a lot of speculation. That doesn't mean that that the cap to a parent would be $1,700 is the way I'm reading this. It could be, you could ask for a $2,000 grant to go to towards tuition, or you could ask for a $5,000 grant to go towards tuition to a private school. Or if you're a public school student, you could ask for a $1,000 grant to pay for a laptop that would maybe help you with after school tutoring, something of that nature. But again, where exactly is that check written to? It can be written, from what I've seen, directly to families. As opposed to if you're, Penn Foster, if you're a private school, would it be written to Penn Foster or otherwise? But there's a lot of guidelines that are just not there. But what I'm reading is what worries me most is if you have some opportunities there for it to go directly to homeschool. And again, I know a lot of people that did a great job in homeschool. Please don't take this as being a negative, but I've also seen some reality in many of our districts. I can speak from experience in Lawrence County. We get pushing on truancy, then all of a sudden, well, that's fine, we'll go in homeschool. And I think we've all faced that. If you push pretty hard on truancy, then all of a sudden that student goes homeschool. Not all the time, but many times. And I need to eat at Jerry's there sometimes. I love the conversations at Jerry's.
I'll buy.
You'll buy?
Questions?
Any other bills? Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Really appreciate the information. Thank you.
Well, can I make one more announcement if you don't mind? And this may have been in some of your notes. We are still looking to close out here. I think we're looking at our next meeting, but we do have non-voting student member and teacher member openings on the board. The eligible students in the 2nd Congressional District would be Barron, Breckenridge, Bullitt, Butler, Davies, Edmondson, Grayson, Green, Hancock, Hardin, Hart, part of Jefferson, LaRue, Logan, McLean, Meade, Muhlenberg, Nelson, Ohio, and Warren would be the eligible students. For eligible teachers would be the 4th Congressional District, which is Boone, Bracken, Campbell, Carroll, Carter, Gallatin, Grant, Greenup, Harrison, Henry, Kenton, Lewis, Mason, Nelson, Oldham, Owen, Pendleton, Robertson, Shelby, Spencer, and Trimble. So if you have an eligible teacher who'd like to be a part of that, we'll be happy to have them, so that you know.
Our next scheduled meeting will be on May the 6th. And again, that will be an in-person and a virtual option will be provided to you if the travel is too far. So don't forget that we change that option and make sure that when Aaron sends out the email requesting for topics of discussion that so that we're about pertinent information and timely information that's impacting you at the May time of the school year. So, any comments or questions before we adjourn? I don't have a motion to adjourn. Motion, second, all those in favor? All right, safe travels, everyone.